I got locked in with the star athlete and we came out together. No, don't! I thrust my hand out to grab the latch, but it was too late for the both of us. I felt my nail clip the steel of the handle as it escaped my grip. Heard the bolt lock with a resounding clunk. From the opposite side, I listened for Anna to come, to the same conclusion I had. She needed the key to open the door. The same key that was around my neck on a cheap blue lanyard. Through the cement wall and the steel door, it was hard to make out her words, but the distinct sound of the door being tried, followed by footsteps on gravel, seemed enough. Wait, it's locked? Deacon asked from behind, his huge figure looming over the equipment as his shadow covered mine. I fixed my glasses, putting my mop against the crook of my shoulder as I turned to look at him. The dim light of the shed was almost entirely blocked out by his broad shoulders and thick skull. Yeah, she can get the spare though. Coach keeps one in the teacher's lounge. I kept mopping. No reason to delay the chore, even if this might be a good excuse to. It gave me another thing to focus on than the way his blonde hair looked so soft. Deacon didn't seem to believe the situation. Or perhaps he had been more panicked at the thought of being trapped, even momentarily, than he seemed to let on. He pushed past me and tried the door himself, thumbing over where the lock would be if there was one on the inside. Damn, so now what? He fixed the shoulders of his varsity jacket as he stood in that corner, finally letting the meager light bulb win. We wait for Anna. Did you finish whatever Coach wanted of you? I dunked my mop in the water. There wasn't exactly much space, but now that Deacon had moved, I could at least do where he had been moments before. A statue that refused to budge. Inventory's done, yeah. Looks like you're done too, he sighed, stretching his arm to one side. It was so unfair, the way his muscles flexed through his shirt, his jacket. He stretched his neck out, too, as he watched. Me? No way. Had to be because there wasn't much else to look at. Yeah, the room filled with a thick silence. The pleather smell of gym equipment and the sound of people far in the distance. This building isn't really meant to hold people in it, so it was never given a lock on the inside. It traps people often enough. The jock scoffed, an eyebrow raising as he smirked. How would you know? Doesn't exactly look like you're the type to come here often. Book. I mean, no offense, he teased. A hand came up almost defensively. I only call him Coach here at school. At home, he's Dad. Unless I've done something wrong. He's worked here for long enough to see it happen by mistake. Or not. Sometimes people want to get trapped in here, you know? I pushed the mop bucket onto the opposite corner, taking a seat on some stacked up gym pads. Oh, so what about you, Book? Did you want to trap me? Deacon's footsteps seemed louder than thunderclouds as he walked closer. Crossing his arms in front of his chest, his shadow crawled over the wall as he once again blocked out what little light there was. I felt my face fill with color as I refused to look up at him, or anywhere near him, really. Not particularly, I shrugged, leaning back on my palms. He smirked, a scoff on his lips. It's not a no. He leaned forward, studying me, before he sighed and leaned back against the bin that held the volleyballs. Can I ask you something, Book? I rolled my eyes, pulling my legs up to cross them on the mats. Only if you stop calling me Book. My name is Booker, I corrected. He blinked, confusion instant on his features as his brows pushed together. Isn't Book short for Booker? The team always calls you that. I thought it was just a nickname, he said so innocently. It was impossible not to believe. He really did think there wasn't anything else to it. Would be a bit silly for them to tell him the outright truth. But for them to indoctrinate him into their bullying without even telling him, that was unexpected. That's not how they mean it. I help out in the library. Miss Connors didn't like it when they called me a nerd, dweeb, or loser, so they settled with Bookworm. Shortened down the book so they could get away with it. There was a silence, quick beat as he unpacked everything. It's a very roundabout insult, he chuckled, shaking his head. I joined in as I matched his laughter. It's as deeply layered as those guys get. Not much else to them. I shook my head, drawing random shapes on the vinyl of the gym pads beneath me. I didn't know that they did that to you. I'll talk to them, he nodded, making eye contact with me. Our eyes met for a moment before I broke it, and I looked to the floor. I don't want your protection or your pity. You don't have to feel sorry for me. My voice was quiet, though, with no real feeling in it. I wasn't sure how to respond, how to really take that someone was actually offering to protect me. Coach had always told me to fight my own battles, but it was confusing in this situation. He'd mentioned never to fight outside my weight class, either, and no one on the rugby team were lightweights. How could I fight back when they were all stronger, taller, and heavier than me? Good. I'm not doing any of it because I feel sorry for you. They're trying to get under your skin, and I don't want that to keep happening. They think they can tease you like that. They try to get me to do it too. I don't particularly want to bother anyone. He scoffed, rubbing the back of his neck, then grinned. Booker then. Sorry about that. The team also says you're in the closet. Is that right? Or another one of their pranks? That one's true. I laughed a bit through my nose and then put my hands on my lap, picking at the hem of my jeans. Yeah, I'm kind of in the closet. Anna, for instance, knows. My friends know. Most of the school knows, to be honest. Coach is the only one that doesn't. It seems like some part of me wondered how it would be possible that he didn't know. Maybe he didn't want to see it. My family knows. I started with them. He seemed oddly shy? He was usually so forward, and the entire time we spoke, even before the door was locked, it felt like I was an ant under a magnifying glass. But now, he was the one averting his gaze. Your family knows what? I asked quietly. Measured, not wanting to misunderstand. I needed to clarify. Mostly, I wanted to hear him say it. That I'm gay, he said, raising an eyebrow like he was saying something that I should have already known. I tilted my head, looking up at him. No one had ever said anything like that about the star athlete, Deacon Winters. You are? But what about Anna? There were whispers, as there always were. She was pretty and blonde, on the volleyball team, and they'd walked home together often enough. What about Anna? Did you think we were a couple or something? He laughed heartedly, before he realized I wasn't laughing along this time. Everyone does, I shrugged. He moved over to the stack I was sitting on and leaned against it. You're together all the time. People talk. I don't have a reason to think otherwise. Huh? I didn't even think about it. Her mom is my cousin's best friend. We practically grew up together. We even live in the same neighborhood now, since I moved. I've always thought of her as just another one of my cousins. He picked at one of the nearby basketballs, fingertip running along each bump on the top. But people were saying you were going to the dance together. I looked away, annoyed that I was even talking about the spring dance. I hadn't thought about going, and no one had ever thought about asking me to go with them. Not that I had made it particularly easy for him to, since I never made any effort to so much as leave the library. I think she would rather die than to be forced to go with me to a dance, he chuckled, and turned to sit on the other side of the gym pads, legs touching the floor from the top of the stack. Mine would have dangled off the edge, and I was suddenly thankful I had chosen to sit cross-legged. One less thing for him to tease me about. She knows? About you, I mean. I had worked at the hem of my jeans to turn them inside out, and was working on turning them back, doing the most minimal thing to distract myself. Yeah, it wasn't my choice, fully. My sister caught me kissing a neighbor boy before we moved, and she was never one to keep her mouth shut. Suddenly, all four of my sisters, my aunts, my cousins, and my parents knew, and there wasn't much to do. It trickled to her eventually. He said it so nonchalantly. The way he'd managed to come to terms with being outed so suddenly. And they supported you? My voice was shaky as my hand gripped the tongue of my shoe and pulled. My grandparents are the only ones who even hesitated. Not because they didn't love me, but because they didn't understand. They still don't really get it, I think, but they don't hate me for it. Besides, they'll still get their great-grandbabies, you know. I hesitated, clenching my hands into fists and then relaxing them, feeling the way that my muscles stretched and breathed. I think that's the part that terrifies me the most. It's just Coach and me. I don't have anyone else to rely on, to give him grandkids. He always talks about the right stuff and how he always dreamed of greatness, but then he got me instead. There's nothing wrong with you. You're smarter than everyone else in the class. You're just shy. It's pretty cute. He looked over to me, but I felt myself curl up, trying to make it impossible for him to see me. Like his eyesight was based on movement, and I could run away at the first thought of his distraction. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I guess most guys don't like to hear that they're cute. Anyway, you have no one else to help you out? Not anymore, I said flatly. He knew there was more to it. Knew that there was a story to be told. But he also knew it wasn't something you just brought up. He waited for a beat, almost wanting to see if I would elaborate. I could. He was confident in his words, and the way he didn't let me disappear from his sight made me all the more real. Could what? I felt my brain whirring as I thought about what he could mean. Help you out. You know, If coming out to Coach goes wrong, like if you need a place to stay or anything, even for a little while, my mom wouldn't mind. He was so sure of himself, so proud. I could never do that. I could never be that. And I never questioned if that could ever change. What? Why? You don't know me. You just found out my name like 5 minutes ago. I pulled my knees up to my chest, gesturing to nothing in particular before fixing my glasses on my face. I could know you. You don't have to be afraid of me, you know. I'm not going to hurt you. You know, the one thing about me that only Anna does, no one else seems to know or care, and I don't really talk about being gay. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, Booker. I just want to get to know you. If talking to me isn't something you want to do, I won't make you. I don't have any ulterior motives. Just want to talk to someone who knows what it's like. Would that be okay? He was quiet, like he was talking to a scared little cat, trying to lure it closer with food. For some reason, the thought of his huge muscles holding a small cat did work to make him softer. Okay, I whispered, resting my cheek on my knee and looking at him. He grinned, resting his hand upright between us on the mats. Tentatively, with heat filling my face, I hid my knees and held his hand. Yeah, okay. We sat quietly in the dim light, his hand warm as he held my much smaller one. I wondered if he could hear my heartbeat, how fast it was, or if he felt it in my fingers. The door rustled, and my head shot up to see who it was. Deacon loosened his grip but didn't pull away, letting me be the one to break the contact if I wanted. Honestly, I wouldn't have minded if Anna saw, but I knew Coach would be on the other side of the door. Just as I moved to sit upright, he slid the door open and the cool air on the other side was so refreshing. Coach stuck his head in, motioning us to get out. Come on, be free. He chewed his gum loudly, holding the door open. I moved to grab the mop and bucket before heading out last, Coach leaning to inspect me. You okay, kiddo? You look red. It's hot in here, Coach. I'm fine. I waved him off, but he pulled my head close to inspect me. Maybe he thought that Deacon had hit me, tried to beat me up or something. I shrugged as he seemed content with the excuse. Coach, you mind if I help Booker take the mop back? Water's pretty heavy. I don't want him falling over or anything. Deacon grabbed the water bucket without waiting for an answer, already walking ahead of us. Coach watched him thoughtfully, then patted my back. Go on then, he coaxed, closing the door to the shed behind him. I hadn't expected Deacon to be so insistent with his friendship. He would walk up to me in the hallways and wait for me to finish up in my locker, walk me to class and not even care that there were people watching, waiting, whispering. He didn't even seem to care that people would move around us, avoiding bumping into us like a shark swimming through a school of fish. I certainly didn't expect him to elect to hang out with me during lunch instead of the rest of the rugby team. For me, who hadn't eaten with someone else in the cafeteria since the start of high school, it was kind of odd. I had a deal with Mrs. Connors to let me eat in the library if I wanted to, but suddenly I didn't need it. Deacon and Anna kept me company. I was in the advanced course and she was still in the regular class, so we would separate in the hall eventually, but still. It was nice to have a feeling of people actually paying attention to where they were walking so as not to bump into me. Anna joked that when the three of us were in the hallway, we looked like those pictures of a great white shark and the small remora fish next to it. Which I guess is why it had startled me the first time when one of the rugby team, Nick or something, I never bothered to learn, had actually pushed my books out of my hands. They slid across the tile floor haphazardly. In stunned silence, I simply turned and crouched to pick up the books. The hall filled with a tense nervousness as I heard the lockers clang above me. Spinning in my head to see what happened, I saw that Deacon had Nick or something up against the lockers, wordlessly gripping his shirt. There was a tense stare, a moment where Deacon measured the appropriate response as they breathed intensely. I saw his fist clench up and he lifted Nick or something higher against the lockers before he released his grip. Not a single word was uttered between the two. Not one was needed. You okay, Booker? He said, kneeling to grab some of my books. He handed them to me, purposely watching my face. Yeah, I'm fine. That was weird. I tried to laugh it off, looking down at the books I had already collected. Deacon softly grabbed my chin, pulling my eyes to look at his. I felt a blush paint itself onto my cheeks as I felt myself discovering, really noticing for the first time, that Deacon had blue eyes. Hopelessly blue. Like looking out to the ocean and hearing seagulls call. Won't happen again. He leaned forward and he brushed his forehead on mine, his mouth coming close. I closed my eyes, my heartbeat loud in my ears as I waited for a kiss that found itself on my cheek. I shivered as he pulled away, books in my hands as he helped me up. I held the back of his jacket dumbly, letting him pull me away. I was sure there were whispers in the hallway, words that would flow from one gossiper to the next. I was positive it would happen, that Deacon had outed himself at least. But at that moment, I felt the cotton of his jacket. All I could do was remember how soft his lips were against my cheek. The way he looked at me. Suddenly I felt cheated. How come he didn't kiss my lips? He stopped in front of my next classroom and, oddly, didn't turn to wave to me like he usually did. I tugged on his jacket and he turned to me, blushing. I hadn't noticed that he was just as red as I was. Red lining where his stubble was coming in. I had to get on my tippy toes, my books pressed into his chest as I moved in to kiss him. His arms wrapped around me, holding me close. Time seemed confused, feeling like an eternity, but somehow not enough time as the bell rang. He smiled against my lips as he pulled away. To this day, I have no idea what the class was about. The rest of the day felt like a dream. The only part I woke up from was when Coach met me by the car at the end of the day. Deacon said one of his boys picked on you today. That true? Coach put the car in gear and pulled out of the parking lot. Nick or something? Yeah, he just shoved my books out of my hands. No one got hurt or anything. I think Deacon was more mad about it than I was. I chuckled amicably and looked out the window to watch the scenery as always. He's a good kid, Coach acknowledged, nodding. I gave a soft smile as I thought about Deacon's eyes again. Yeah, I haven't even heard anyone call me Book in ages. I guess I finally have someone in my corner. I rested my head against the window. Coach was quiet for a bit before he looked at me. I didn't know anyone teased you. He seemed annoyed. But at what? I wasn't sure. Because I couldn't fight my own battles? Because he hadn't noticed? Perhaps because he had realized they had fallen short in this instance. You didn't ask, I reminded him defensively. Unfairly, truth be told. Coach had a lot on his plate, and between all the teams he had to pay attention to, it wasn't a rarity that sometimes I got a little forgotten. He was the only parent I had, and talking to him wasn't exactly easy. We didn't have much in common with our differing interests and our general hesitancy to say what we were really thinking. Well then, anyone else I should know about? He seemed to concede quickly, ignoring my obvious brattiness. Not this week. I rolled my eyes and looked out the window, expecting the usual silence at the end of the day. But the radio hadn't been turned on to listen to the sports channel, as he usually had it. You and Anna have been spending a lot of time together. Are you going to ask her to the dance, or is she going with Deacon? I looked over my shoulder at him. Neither of us is going. Anna, she's like Deacon's cousin, and I'm not interested in her. I looked back out the window, up at the clouds. Why not? She's a nice girl. He meant it so honestly, it was hard to get mad, but the implication of a much-needed conversation had spoiled the talk, before it even really happened. She's my friend, kind of enjoying having friends this year. You know, I'm not really ready to push it and lose that. She's not interested in me, and I'm not interested in her. That's fine. I grabbed the hem of my shirt tightly and released it. Holding onto the driveway, couldn't come soon enough. My phone vibrated, and I pulled it out of my pocket to check. A smile crept across my lips as I saw it was from Deacon. We sent messages back and forth. It was always peaceful. It was soft, sweet. Something I had never had before. We fell asleep sending messages to each other. The dance was coming up fast, and the anticipation was high across the school. Deacon and I would sneak kisses every so often. Despite our affections, we hadn't really placed a final word on what our relationship was. I think we generally had decided that we were dating, but neither of us could say it without blushing intensely. Most nights we would spend texting each other or video chatting. I'd met his family through enough calls that I felt comfortable enough to speak to them. It all happened so quickly when I opened my locker the week before the dance. The confetti fell first, heart-shaped. At first, I was annoyed, tired in the early morning and wondering who Deacon was going to have to knock down a peg. But the poster in the locker was simple, reading, "Will you go to the spring dance with me?" Deacon ran to me and lifted me up, both of us giggling as I slapped his chest. Fine, fine, put me down. I playfully struggled in his arms as he held me up. He put me down gently, both of us giddy. Deep down, though, I felt anxiety blooming. Coach would want to know who I was going to the dance with. How was I going to explain that I was going with this top player? You okay? Deacon asked, ruffling my hair. I gave a meek little smile at him, grabbing my elbow. This is going to be hard to explain to Coach. I'm not sure what to do. I scratched at my elbow, and he took my hand and held it. Do you want me to be there when you tell him? You can do it alone if you want, but I want to support you. He kissed the hand that I had been picking at myself with, then dropped it. Thanks. Yeah, I really do want you with me, now that I'm thinking of it. I just don't know when. I've been wanting to, have our families meet or just have you over or something. I want him to know you like I do. I'm just scared. I'll be there for you, Booker. He kissed my temple, and I smiled up at him. He was so sweet, so honest, so gentle, and I wanted to make him happy. I wanted to finally be out. Both of us not hiding anything from anyone. The next few days, winter slithered back as though it was disgusted to say that it was finally spring. It had been a day when Deacon had to do inventory, so I stood in the doorway of the shack and made sure it didn't close. My jacket that day was thin. I had misjudged how cold it would be. I shivered as I leaned against the door to hold it open. Deacon chuckled, taking his jacket off as he strode over to me and put it around my shoulders. He kissed my cheek and I whined, leaning forward to kiss his lips. What's going on here? Coach asked, stomping over and putting a hand on Deacon's shoulder, pulling him off. He seemed angry at first, then confused. There was a mixture of emotions at play on his face as he seemed to realize that he hadn't walked in on his star bullying his son. Booker? Dad, it's not what you think. I started the most cliche thing I could think to say as my head reeled. My chest felt tight and I thought I was going to pass out. The air thin and my vision tunneling. What's going on? Did you just kiss my son? Booker, why are you in his jacket? He stumbled through questions, unsure if he even wanted to know the answers. I don't want to say it. I'm petrified if I say it. It'll ruin everything. I know I already disappoint you because I'm not able to do sports like you wanted. I could feel tears welling up in my eyes as I waited for the world to start crashing down. He tried to intervene. But I held my hand up and silenced him, continuing on. He pursed his lips behind his mustache. I know you always wanted someone else with the right stuff to win an award and be in the trophy case. You always said that when I was little. During every single game we ever watched together, there you were, looking at me expectantly, like you were wanting me to pick up my favorite sport. But I can't do it, okay? I don't want that, and I know what disappoints you. So I read my books and I isolate myself because I'm so terrified of failing someone else as badly as I fail you. I stopped for a moment, letting my brain catch up with my panic as I covered my mouth. My father didn't know what to say, so he didn't. Just waited. Just watched. What does this have to do with Deacon? He tried after a while of watching me sob into my boyfriend's jacket. He makes me feel like I don't have to hide anymore. Like every time I speak, it isn't another opportunity for me to say the wrong thing. I love him. He's my boyfriend and I love him. Deacon wrapped me in his hug, his shoulders warm and broad. We hadn't gotten to that point in our relationship yet, where we had said that to each other seriously. I felt his heart beating against my cheek, and he kissed my head. I wanted to say something, but I was waiting for Booker to say it first. Deacon looked over his shoulder at my father. I wasn't brave enough to look up from his shirt. We're going to the dance together. So I'm the last person to hear about this? Coach asked, gruffly, putting a hand on my shoulder. Any other secrets I should know about, or just this? Just this, Dad. I'm gay. I wiped my tears on Deacon's jacket sleeves, laughing incredulously. I should hope you're gay, or at least bisexual, or that would certainly be awkward for Deacon. Let me lock up now, so we can grab pizza on the way home. He pulled me out of the way of the shed door, sliding it shut as he double-checked that it was locked. He turned on his heel and pointed at me. Now let me be clear with you. You are the best thing this world has ever offered me, and I have at no point been disappointed in you. There are a million ways I have come up short with you, kiddo, and I intend to fix it. That's what it means to have the right stuff. You're my son. I love you, and you're all I have. I don't intend on ruining that anytime soon. I love you too. I threw my arms around my dad, feeling an incredibly rare twitch of his mouth that he only ever had on my mother's birthday. The one that warned that he would not let himself cry in front of his son. Pepperoni then? Deacon asked, eyebrow raised as he walked backwards to the parking lot. He had his phone in his hand, messaging his mom. I'll call. I pulled out my phone, letting my dad usher us to the car. On the night of the dance, we pulled up to Deacon's house to pick him up for the evening. Coach adjusted my tie as we waited for his mother to answer the doorbell. Listening to her immediately fawning over how we looked, she had insisted on getting us matching outfits and was overjoyed at having us take pictures together. Anna had her boyfriend over and we all took photos until there were dots in our eyes from where the retinas were burned. The evening was magical and only slightly awkward when we remembered that Coach was a chaperone. Conclusion. Coach took everything in stride. He's proud to call me his son and happy that I had someone to call my own. Deacon and I are still dating, contemplating what's to come next for college. People don't tease me, and if they ever dare try to, Deacon puts a stop to that pretty quickly. Every night we video chat until we fall asleep. Deacon's mom is insistent that we have family dinner at least once a week. We're both happy, and I can't say that I have felt this secure about anything. I'm still anxious, but I know that I have someone with me to support me every step of the way. The end. How important do you feel support and patience are in a relationship? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.
Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.